What did you make of the protests?
I mean, I thought it was terribly depressing. You know, if you were visiting here from some foreign land and didn't know the context, and you saw the level of vitriol being thrown at her, you saw the level of security protection that she required, you might think that she was on trial for war crimes or something of that nature. Instead, as you just said, simply stating that men are men and women are women. I also found it very depressing. You know, it's one thing for university senior management to try and stifle free speech, but it's another thing altogether for students themselves to willingly stifle free speech. I mean, the entire...
I don't know. I think it's worse the other way round. I think the fact that the university bodies have not stood up against this, I find their academics as well, I find that more scary. I kind of expect 19-year-olds to act like idiots.
Well, it's undoubtedly scary when the powers that be try and clamp down on free speech, and that's why I'm happy to see this legislation being pushed through by the government. But there is something undeniably depressing about students who should be seeking to broaden their horizons, be curious, challenge their thinking on the world, to actually decide, you know what, we don't need to hear this, full stop. And I mean, you know, Oxford is meant to be a bastion of academia and intellect, and the best they had was some individual gluing their hand to the floor. You know, it was utterly pathetic.
Well, let's hear actually from that protester, Riz Posnet. She would say her pronouns are they, but I prefer to use biological reality. I'm not in any way intending any offence. I just stick to reality. Riz Posnet spoke outside the Oxford Union following being released by police. She interrupted Kathleen Stock's talk, glued herself to the floor. She was wearing a T-shirt saying "No more dead trans kids." Not sure that was helpful. She called the talk dangerous. Here's what she had to say outside the Oxford Union later. Can we get to that clip or not? Yeah. Got it now, I think.
It's not about me, where I'm just one of you all trying to protest this speech. She has a right to free speech as much as we have a right with our Article 10 and 11 rights to protest. And I exercise those rights. I'm sure you all agree with me that her speech is dangerous, is hateful, and it hurts trans people, particularly trans youth.
I don't know what the word was that was beeped out, James, but it's not about me. I mean... It's always about the people who protest, isn't it? Look at me, look at me. I thought some wonderful pictures, actually, of Riz sort of glued there, sitting there, looking very pleased, you know, to have her T-shirt on. And there was Kathleen Stock just sitting there sort of mildly amused. The key thing is the speech, well, not speech, but the talk, the Q&A was able to take place. But again, it's when people say things like dangerous and hateful, what I would really like is people like Kathleen Stock and people like J.K. Rowling, who get extraordinary abuse online, for them to start suing. I'd like to be, you know, we start actually having libel actions against people, you know, saying lies about people who are saying things that are not remotely controversial to the vast majority of us.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, we're being told that these individuals are bringing down a genocide on trans people. I mean, it's atrocious. But, you know, from a mental health perspective, I am concerned that we are encouraging mental ill health. I mean, I read this story about these welfare spaces that had to be set up that featured things like earplugs for students who are so distressed at the thought of Kathleen Stock even being within a 5-mile radius of them. I mean, this is deeply worrying. I mean, as I said earlier, students should be there to broaden their intellectual horizons. But, I mean, to be encouraging young people in society to become this, I don't know, this stressed out, this overwhelmed simply because there's somebody that they disagree with on their campus. I mean, it's really quite worrying. And I don't know what their professors and lecturers think of this type of conduct, but certainly if I was running a university, they'd be out the door altogether. I mean, it's.
Oh, well, that's the thing, and now that's not cancel culture. My view is if you are not willing to allow debate, I mean, there's a difference between someone standing outside with a placard. I've got no problem with that. I can think you're an idiot because you're saying someone shouldn't be allowed to speak, but if you're actually doing anything to actually stop someone being able to speak, I think that should be, you know, that's against the rules of the university. They are required to allow free speech. I think you should be told, you're out the door. That's just not acceptable. Students need to be told, you can speak, but you can't stop other people speaking. And also, if you're so convinced that you're right, why don't you debate these supposedly dangerous, hateful ideas? Because when we debated people like Nick Griffin of the BNP, it's amazing how often their ideas are defeated by sensible ideas. But I want to talk to you also about these dangerous ideas. I mean, how much the really dangerous ideas about, you know, this trans sort of cult ideology, how much they have imposed themselves on, you know, the NHS, the trans group Mermaids, being able to effectively draft NHS guidelines for treating children who are questioning their gender. You have, as someone, you know, you're a therapist yourself. You worked as with Childline, helping to talk to children who included those who were concerned, you know, worried about their bodies and questioning their gender. And you've exposed how quickly so many people now working in Childline will be to talk about, you know, chest binding and talk about, you know, other ways of sort of effectively encouraging children down this questioning of their gender route. This ideology, it's in our schools, it's in our you know, our mental health guidance, it's in our NHS. This is getting really scary.
It is, and people, and particularly parents, don't know who they can trust anymore. I mean,